GA child definitely begins in a state where there is no ego. And then, about the 4th year or before, but about that time, the child develops a fist of ego. I, my child. And that is, in the first place, a certain identity with the body. You think you're in control, don't you? You believe that the decisions you make, the thoughts you think, the emotions you feel, all of this is a result of your conscious will, your reason. But what if I told you that this is precisely the illusion that is holding you back from unlocking your full potential? That this you, who thinks they are in command, is just a carefully constructed facade, and behind it there is a boundless, untapped power yearning to be unleashed. I'm not here to flatter you, I'm here to challenge you. Because if you're drawn to this message, it's because deep down you sense a discord, a gap between the life you're living and the life you know you're capable of. No matter how meticulously you cultivate your image, no matter how convincingly you reassure yourself that all is well, you feel a persistent undercurrent of unease, a restless yearning for something more. Perhaps you find yourself relentlessly pursuing unattainable standards. Perhaps you tirelessly seek external validation. Perhaps you've amassed all the trappings of conventional success, yet a hollow echo resonates within. Do you understand why? Because the ego, this intricate yet ultimately limiting construct you call I, has seized control, and it is diverting you from the wellspring of your true self. Carl Jung did not demonize the ego, but rather recognized it as a confined aspect of the psyche, prone to overestimating its significance. And when you succumb to the belief that the ego encompasses your entire being, you unwittingly confine yourself within invisible walls. You begin to curate a carefully crafted image, a persona, a character designed to navigate the expectations of the external world. And in this very process, you sever your connection to your authentic self, your inherent wisdom, your untapped potential, everything that would genuinely empower you to thrive. You start to adapt, to conform, to manipulate, rationalizing it as maturity. But what you are actually doing is evading a profound encounter with your genuine essence. And do you recognize the consequences of this avoidance? Shallow relationships, self-inflicted setbacks, existential crises, a pervasive fear of failure, of judgment, of inadequacy. All of these are manifestations of an inflated, yet paradoxically fragile ego. But today, I want to guide you toward what Jung perceived beyond this deceptive framework. In this exploration, we will conduct an autopsy of the ego. We will peel back the layers of self-deception, dismantling the narratives that hold you captive, and in the end, perhaps, just perhaps, you will begin to glimpse the magnificent being you are truly meant to be. Are you prepared for this journey? Because what follows will not be comfortable. It will demand vulnerability and courage, but it holds the potential to revolutionize your existence. Before we proceed, let's establish a clear understanding of the force we are confronting. The ego, in Jungian terms, is not inherently malevolent, nor is it inherently virtuous. It serves as the center of your conscious awareness, the point of reference through which you assert, I am. However, the critical issue arises when the ego assumes it is everything, thereby confining your experience to the tangible, the controllable, and the secure. The ego is the part of the mind that meticulously crafts your social identity. It carefully selects what to reveal to the world, what to conceal, what feelings or desires are deemed acceptable. It edits your story, manipulates your memories, distorts your emotions, all in the service of maintaining a consistent narrative. But this consistency is achieved at a substantial cost. You are compelled to amputate integral parts of yourself to conform to the idealized image that the ego has painstakingly constructed. From your earliest years, you have been conditioned to mold yourself, to suppress anger, sadness, vulnerability, to feign smiles when tears welled up, to comply when your spirit yearned to rebel, to embody the expectations of others, even at the expense of your authentic self. And who orchestrated this process? The ego, initially conceived to shield you from pain, rejection, and shame. It gradually lost sight of its role as a messenger and began to usurp the throne. Jung astutely observed that the ego is merely a small island in the vast ocean of the psyche, a minuscule fraction of your totality, yet it arrogates to itself the authority to dictate what is right or wrong within you. It judges, compares, categorizes, and clings to limiting labels such as "I am this way" or "that is not for me." But these are not immutable truths. They are simply products of conditioning. The ego is a master of deception, perpetuating illusions at every turn. It proclaims your independence, yet craves external validation. It boasts of your rationality, yet harbors a deep-seated fear of exposure. It projects an image of strength, yet crumbles under the slightest criticism. It asserts your uniqueness, yet dedicates its energy to conforming to societal norms. And the most insidious aspect of this deception is that it convinces you that this self-imposed prison is freedom. You begin to conflate personality with essence. You mistake your automatic reactions for your inherent nature. But the ego is not your soul. It's simply a mechanism, useful in certain contexts but profoundly limited. When you mistake it for your true self, you engage in an internal battle that knows no end. And the more deeply you identify with the ego, the more pervasive your fears become. The fear of losing control, of making mistakes, of appearing vulnerable, of being inadequate, of being unloved. And this fear is precisely what solidifies the ego's grip on power. But there exists something far more profound. To perpetuate its dominion, the ego must constantly defend itself. And how does it achieve this? Through the creation of the persona and the repression of the shadow. In the following section, we will delve into how the ego constructs masks to ensure its survival, and how these very masks are suffocating your authenticity. If this resonates with you, click the subscribe button and become part of this transformative journey. Thank you for your unwavering support. You are not merely the sum of your conscious thoughts and actions. Much of what you perceive as your identity has been meticulously constructed as a defense mechanism, a role you have learned to play to navigate the complexities of emotional, social, and psychological survival. This carefully crafted role is what Carl Jung termed the persona, the mask we wear for the world. It is the public face of the ego, what you present to be accepted, admired, loved. And let's be honest, we all wear masks to varying degrees. From an early age, you internalize the message that certain aspects of yourself are deemed unacceptable, that expressing anger is inappropriate, that feeling envy is distasteful, that shedding tears is a sign of weakness, that desiring too much is selfish. Consequently, you begin to conceal these aspects, to silence, to filter, to repress. The persona is born out of fear of rejection, fear of exclusion, fear of inadequacy. And the ego, attempting to safeguard you, concocts an edited version of your being, more palatable, more polished, more socially adept. You transform into someone agreeable, polite, controlled, but also someone fragmented, artificial, trapped in patterns that no longer serve you. The fundamental problem is that the more deeply you identify with this mask, the further you stray from your authentic truth. And this disconnection exacts a heavy toll: anxiety, emotional depletion, a persistent sense of inadequacy. You strive to project strength, yet feel perpetually fragile. You endeavor to maintain control, yet find yourself ensnared in internal chaos. On the surface, everything appears to be in order. Within, a silent scream reverberates. And what's even more disheartening, you engage in this charade unconsciously. You genuinely believe that this mask represents your true self. And thus, the ego fulfills its most insidious function, not only concealing your wounds, but convincing you that they don't even exist. You become estranged from your own being. You live as an actor, perpetually seeking approval, tirelessly striving to fit in, and with each passing day, you feel increasingly distant from something you cannot even articulate, yet desperately long for. Jung posited that everything consciousness rejects does not simply vanish, it is relegated to the unconscious realm. And there, in the shadowy depths of the psyche, what he designated as the shadow takes form. Everything you deny, suppress, and disavow, all the thoughts, impulses, desires, and fears that clash with the ego's idealized self-image, find their way into this hidden domain. And while you exert all your energy to maintain the integrity of your mask, the shadow silently, insidiously grows. And this is where the stakes become dramatically higher, because what you reject ultimately controls you. What you ignore ultimately dominates you. In the next section, we will explore the subtle yet often devastating signs that the ego is wreaking havoc on your life, often without your conscious awareness. You believe you are living intentionally, yet in reality, you are being propelled by impulses you cannot comprehend, reactions you cannot control, and decisions that appear to be your own, but are not. The ego, when left unexamined, begins to navigate your existence like an autopilot disguised as free will. It concocts plausible justifications for self-destructive choices, masquerades insecurities as strengths, and transmutes fear into arrogance. And you passively accept this, mistaking it for normalcy. But it is not. Do you want to know if the ego is undermining your well-being? Examine your patterns. Do you consistently seek external approval? Do you require constant validation from others for your actions, your efforts, your resilience? This is not genuine strength. It is masked emotional dependence. The ego desperately needs external validation because without it, it feels threatened. It's as if, devoid of applause, your existence loses its meaning. Do you find yourself incessantly comparing? Do you experience envy when you encounter someone more accomplished, more attractive, more successful? Conversely, do you feel a fleeting sense of relief when you observe someone seemingly less fortunate than yourself? This is not ambition, it's masked insecurity. The ego assesses your worth relative to others because it lacks an internal compass. It doesn't strive for personal evolution. It seeks superiority. Are you paralyzed by the fear of making mistakes? Do you freeze when confronted with decisions? Do you find yourself trapped in a labyrinth of possibilities, unable to commit to any? This is not prudence. It's the ego, terrified of appearing weak, flawed, or foolish. The ego demands perfection because any perceived failure is interpreted as a direct assault on its carefully constructed image. Do you feel compelled to always be right, to have the final word, to relentlessly defend your perspective, to win every argument? This is not logic. It's the ego desperately clinging to the illusion of control. When someone challenges your ideas, the ego interprets it as a personal attack on your very identity. It would sooner sacrifice relationships than concede a point. Do you engage in self-sabotage, rejecting opportunities, pushing away loved ones, procrastinating on critical decisions? This is not simply bad luck. It's the ego paralyzed by the fear of the unknown, because embracing growth, change, and transformation requires relinquishing the certainties the ego has meticulously cultivated, and it would rather endure a familiar hell than venture into an uncertain paradise. These are just a few indicators. There are countless others. Superficial relationships, an inability to seek help, unresolved resentments, a vague sense of sadness that lacks an apparent cause. All of these are manifestations of the ego in action, silently undermining your peace, your self-love, and your freedom. And the more you reinforce this system, the further you deviate from your authentic essence. You become a prisoner of a fabricated version of yourself. But here is the most agonizing truth. The ego has no vested interest in your happiness. It craves control, and to maintain its grip, it will keep you trapped, dissatisfied, and afraid as long as it remains the dominant force. Now that you have identified the warning signs, an unavoidable question emerges. Why is it so arduous to change? Why, even with the awareness that something is amiss, do you persist in self-sabotaging behaviors, repeating unproductive patterns, and evading genuine self-discovery? The answer lies in the ego's profound fear of transformation, and this is precisely what we will explore in the subsequent section. Change is inherently challenging. Growth necessitates courage. But what few realize is that the most formidable resistance to transformation does not originate from external circumstances. It arises from within. It stems from the ego. And here is a truth that many are hesitant to acknowledge. You are not stuck because you lack the capacity to move forward. You are stuck because a part of you is actively resisting change. That part is your ego. The ego vehemently resists change, not out of malice or incompetence, but because it was fundamentally designed to shield you from perceived threats. The challenge lies in the fact that it accomplishes this through the most rudimentary means possible, by evading anything that threatens the identity structure it has painstakingly erected, even if that identity is ultimately suffocating you. The ego thrives on certainty. It must maintain the illusion that it understands who you are, how the world operates, what to anticipate from others. It concocts narratives, rationalizations, explanations, many of them patently false, solely to maintain a sense of control. And when you begin to challenge these carefully constructed truths, the ego panics, because embracing change necessitates acknowledging that perhaps you have been living a lie, that perhaps much of what you believe to be inherently you was simply adaptation, mere survival. Carl Jung explored this intricate process extensively. He asserted that the ego must be decentered to allow the self, the true center of the psyche, the totality of your being, to emerge. And this transition is rarely seamless. It often involves a collapse, a direct confrontation with the shadow, with everything you have rejected, denied, or suppressed within yourself. This is precisely why so many individuals shy away from genuine self-knowledge, because delving into the depths of one's being is not a tranquil stroll through idyllic landscapes. It is a descent into the underworld. It is confronting chaos. And the ego instinctively recognizes this. It understands that if you truly excavate the depths of your being, if you examine yourself with unwavering honesty, it will relinquish its control. That is why it employs sabotage. It generates distractions, orchestrates dramas, conjures rationalizations, and erects barriers. It whispers that it is not the right time, that you are not ready, that this entire endeavor is misguided. It would much prefer that you remain unfulfilled but predictable, rather than risk discovering the boundless potential within. The fear of change, at its core, is the fear of the ego's demise, because for the new to be born, the old must inevitably die. And the ego recoils from this process like a cornered animal. It will resort to any tactic to keep you tethered to the outdated version of yourself, even if that version is slowly eroding your spirit. But here is the pivotal truth. The ego only possesses power to the extent that you believe it is you. The instant you begin to observe it, to question its narratives, to dismantle its illusions, something far grander awakens within, something more profound, more authentic, more liberated. And it is this something grander that Jung referred to as the self, the genuine center of the psyche, the point where all fragmented parts converge and integrate. But to access this transformative potential, you must traverse the chaos. You must descend to the foundations of your being, shatter the illusions, confront what has been repressed. In the upcoming section, we will specifically address how to break free from this self-imposed prison and embark on the path of integration. The ego will undoubtedly resist, but if you possess the courage to persevere, you may, for the first time, experience the taste of true freedom. Having witnessed the confines of your self-constructed prison, the inevitable question is, how do I escape? How do I liberate myself from the control of a fragile, fearful, and ultimately limiting ego? The answer lies not in annihilating the ego, but in restoring it to its rightful position. The ego should not be eradicated. It should be integrated. And for Jung, this integration is the very essence of the individuation process, the journey toward becoming a whole, fully realized human being. But make no mistake, this path demands far more than passive reading and intellectual contemplation. It requires a direct confrontation with what you have avoided throughout your life, because everything you have suppressed, your traumas, your wounds, your unresolved emotions, remains alive within you, relegated to the unconscious, where they exert their influence as invisible forces. And as long as you fail to bring them into the light, you will continue to operate on autopilot, repeating patterns you cannot comprehend, sabotaging your own progress. The initial step is brutally honest self-inquiry. Cease concealing yourself behind justifications and rationalizations. Ask yourself, who am I without the roles I play? Who are you when no one is watching? Who are you without the filters, without the masks, without the compulsion to please or defend yourself? This is the genesis of the ego's deconstruction. It will resist with all its might. It will label you as weak. It will attempt to convince you that you are exaggerating, that you don't need to engage in this endeavor. But persevere, because this very discomfort is a symptom that something profound is stirring within you. Next comes the essential work with the shadow. And no, this is not a fanciful, spiritualized concept. This is profound psychology. It entails acknowledging that you experience anger, envy, jealousy, pride, neediness, vanity, all the emotions you have been conditioned to repress. And here is the key insight. Your shadow is not your adversary. It is a disowned part of yourself that has been abandoned, and everything that is rejected will eventually seek retribution in the form of uncontrolled impulses, self-destructive behaviors, and unconscious sabotage. You must learn to engage in dialogue with your shadow, to embrace it without judgment, to listen to its underlying message. It serves as a portal to your vital energy, your creativity, your emotional truth. Ignoring it is tantamount to living with only half a soul. Jung asserted that integration transpires when you cease striving to be good and begin embracing wholeness, when you accept both your light and your darkness. And from this integration, something genuinely new emerges. The self, a center far deeper than the ego, wiser, quieter, an inner presence that does not require external approval, comparison, or control, because it simply is and that is inherently enough. But how do you cultivate this connection? The path is not external. It is not found in pre-packaged formulas or charismatic gurus. It resides in solitude, in introspection, in therapy, in honest writing, in observing your dreams. It resides in the courage to plunge into the depths of your being without any guarantee that you will emerge unscathed, because you will not. But what will be destroyed is not your authentic self. It is the illusion of who you believed yourself to be. And as you navigate this transformative journey, you begin to perceive the ego for what it truly is. A servant, not a master. A tool, not an identity. You relegate it to the back seat, and for the first time, it is your essence that guides your path, no longer your insecurity. But before we conclude, there is a crucial point that must be addressed. Because even after embarking on this path of awareness, many individuals relapse into the ego's trap. Do you know why? Because they fail to recognize that the ego is remarkably cunning. It can even disguise itself as spirituality. And that is what we will discuss in this final section. How to maintain the ego in its proper role and how to fundamentally transform your relationship with it forever. We have arrived at the most critical juncture of this exploration. Understanding that the ego does not need to be vanquished. It simply needs to be placed in its rightful position. The ego is not the absolute villain of your story. It is merely a character that assumed the leading role, driven by the fear of non-existence. But you were not destined to live under the tyranny of fear. You were meant to live in alignment with your authentic essence. The ego is indeed necessary. It organizes your identity, facilitates your functioning in the external world, and safeguards you from genuine threats. But it cannot be the ruling force. When the ego takes the lead, your life becomes a performance. Your relationships devolve into transactions. Your emotions manifest as symptoms. Your mind becomes a prison. And the most devastating consequence, you begin to mistake mere survival for genuine fulfillment. However, when the ego is relegated to the role of servant, when you cease blindly following its dictates and begin to observe its machinations with clarity, something profound shifts. You transition from reacting to responding. You begin to consciously choose. You start to create. Emotional turbulence transforms into clarity. The pain does not vanish entirely, but it no longer holds dominion over you. The compulsion to please, to win, to prove simply loses its grip. You begin to operate from a different center, quieter, deeper, more authentic. It is the self assuming its rightful position, and when that transpires, you no longer need to pretend to be someone, because you simply are. But exercise caution. The ego does not disappear entirely. It does not simply cease to exist. It adapts. It will attempt to conceal itself behind new masks: spirituality, intellectualism, authenticity, high performance. It will endeavor to persuade you that you are now enlightened, that you have comprehended everything, that you no longer need to engage in self-reflection. Be wary of these deceptive tactics. Whenever you believe you have arrived, pause and ask yourself, who is speaking in this moment? Is it the self, or is it the ego in a novel disguise? The journey of integration is continuous. There is no final destination. There is no state of arrival. There is only presence, internal vigilance, humility to continue descending into the depths of your being, even when the external world attempts to drag you back to the surface. And if you have journeyed this far, it is because you are ready for this, ready to cease living on autopilot, ready to embrace discomfort as a gateway to growth, ready to place the ego where it belongs, in service to the soul. Now, I invite you to share. What insights have you gained about yourself throughout this exploration? Which aspect resonated most deeply? Please leave a comment below. This is not merely about generating engagement. It is about consciously processing what you have experienced. Articulating your thoughts in writing is a powerful way to integrate your newfound understanding. And remember, if this message resonated with you, I encourage you to watch the next exploration. It is equally as pivotal as this one. The journey does not end here. In fact, it is only just beginning. So, as we come to the end of our journey into the inner landscape of the ego, remember the core message. You are far more than the limited identity you've constructed. You possess a boundless capacity for growth, for healing, and for living a life that truly resonates with your authentic self. It's about recognizing the ego for what it is, a useful tool, not the commander of your entire being. By understanding its mechanisms, integrating your shadow, and cultivating that quiet inner presence, you can unlock levels of cognitive clarity and step into a life of genuine freedom and fulfillment. We also discussed elements of the Sattva AI philosophy of self. In the context of what makes up our identity in a digital age, I would absolutely love to hear your thoughts. What resonated most deeply with you? What challenges are you facing in this process of ego integration? Leave a comment below, ask a question, or share your own insights. Let's build a community of support and exploration together. And if you found this exploration valuable, I invite you to subscribe to the channel. By subscribing, you'll ensure that you don't miss out on future videos exploring the fascinating world of the psyche, unlocking your full potential, and gaining useful mental health tools. We've got so much more planned, and I can't wait to share it with you. Until next time, keep exploring, keep questioning, and keep cultivating that inner light.